Welcome, everyone. Before we dive into today's extraordinary conversation, I just want to take a moment to thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Your support, whether it's through sharing the podcast, leaving a review, or simply tuning in each week, makes a massive difference. Together, we're creating a space where stroke survivors, caregivers, and allies can feel seen, heard, and inspired. As you may have heard in recent episodes, since 2015, I've been personally covering all the costs of producing the Recovery After Stroke podcast to ensure stroke survivors, caregivers, and their loved ones have free access to valuable resources. Last year, I opened up the opportunity for those who feel they've received value from the podcast to support it through Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has supported the podcast in any way. Your encouragement truly keeps me going. A very special thank you to my most recent Patreon supporters, David and Luke. Your generosity means the world to me and helps me ensure I can continue creating episodes that support stroke survivors everywhere. If you are unable to support financially, simply listening to the ads without skipping them goes a long way toward keeping the project alive. I'm incredibly grateful for everyone who listens, supports, and engages with the podcast in any capacity. It means everything to me and helps me stay committed to reaching my goal of 1,000 interviews and beyond. Before we get started, I'd also like to take a small moment to remind you about my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. It has been a resource for many stroke survivors and their families, offering practical guidance and hope during challenging times. You can grab your copy on Amazon by searching my name, Bill Gassiamis, or by going to recoveryafterstroke.com/book. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Mike Maki. Mike's story is one of courage, reflection, and transformation after experiencing a wake-up stroke earlier this year. He shares his honest journey through recovery, learning to manage type 2 diabetes, navigating emotional impact of burnout, and redefining what matters most in his life. His story will inspire anyone facing recovery after a stroke or a health scare. Let's jump in. Mike Mackey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to it, and I really enjoy your videos that you've been producing. And I'm just it's been a little over 2 months since I had my stroke, and it's really been tremendous help for me watching the videos that you put out.
I'm glad. 2nd of January this year,
Yep,
if I'm not wrong.
correct. Yep,
Man,
yeah. The 1st of January was like any other day, and I was expecting to go back to work on the second. Get out of bed early and get started for the kind of was a weird week because the first was on the Wednesday, so Thursday was kind of back to work week for the short week, and yeah, my whole little world got turned upside down that morning. But
what did you notice? What did it feel like?
so the odd thing with, and I actually just saw my neurologist here this past Tuesday for a just a routine follow up, and he called it a wake up stroke, where he said that it probably happened during the night when I was asleep. But the weirdest thing to me was my wife normally she goes for a walk with a friend a couple times a week, and she gets up crazy early, like 4:30 a.m. or in the morning.
Jeez. Wow, she's
She's
one of those people.
Yeah, she's dedicated. I wish I had that. But she got up, and normally what she does when she's leaving, she just, it's still dark in our room. She went to, usually gives me a kiss on the forehead, lets me know she's leaving. And for some reason, and it's never ever happened before, it startled me so bad. I mean, I almost struck her, just because it's dark. I mean, it just, so I thought I was just having some kind of a dream, and she startled me. Um, and then, so that was probably about 4:30. Yeah, 4:30, quarter to 5. My alarm went off at 6 when I normally would get up. And I just was like, I'm gonna snooze a little bit, which I sometimes do. I mean, I don't want to make, and then probably 6:30, I'm like, well, I gotta get up, let the dogs out, then I gotta get going about my day. And I felt off. And when I started to get out of bed, felt like my left arm, my left leg were severely asleep, like I slept funny. And I was thinking, oh, it's my limbs are asleep from, I must have slept really strange. Well, I took the first step and it didn't let up, and I knew something was wrong. Somehow I was able to make it to our kitchen. Um, and I was debating, I'm like, my gut right away knew, I mean, was telling me it was a stroke, but I didn't want to, like, in that moment, accept that's probably what was happening to me. So I'm like, I don't know. So I decided I'd give my wife a call because by now she'd be on her way to work. You know, I I wanted to make sure that the hospital that was close by us was in our insurance network because I didn't want to go somewhere that was going to cost a fortune or. And she's like, I'm coming home right away because she didn't want me. I was going to drive to the hospital. And she got home like in 20 minutes. Hopefully, she drove safely, but she got home super quick. And we decided, so we went right into the hospital. I think within like 30 minutes, they were giving me a CT scan. And as soon as I had the CT scan, they admitted me, or said I was going to be admitted to the hospital. Spent a good part of the day in the emergency room while they're trying to get a room ready. And it seemed as the day went on, my condition, at least as far as my leg and my arm, got worse because by the end of I wasn't even able to walk, or if I were in the hospital bed, I wasn't even able to get out at that point.
Intense.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly your world can change, just things can change in your everyday life. But
What was your previous medical history like? Is it just all good up until then, or did you have some speed bumps along the way?
yeah, overall, it's been good, just like physical injuries like rotator cuff, things like that. In hindsight, now that I look back, there's a lot of like things that I should have been doing as far as like high blood pressure and, like a lot of those little boxes they start rattling off, and you're like, oh, yeah, I've got that. I've got that. I do have type 2 diabetes as well. And I mean, I have to admit, I mean, I've always been what I'd consider healthy, like active, and work can be a fairly physical job at times. I always kind of gave myself some leeway and said, well, I'm always working, physically hard, but, I wasn't really taking care of myself the way I really should have. The doctor said it could have been some genetics. I'm sure you would know, as running a small business, there's a lot of stress involved. That was some of my first things was one, I wasn't so much worried about myself, but I was thinking, obviously my family. And then also I look at my team at work, their families are dependent on our company, providing their living as well. So, you know, I mean, I take that seriously. I'm sure most people do if they're running a small business. You really feel that weight on you, like, I don't want to let these people down. And to be honest, I kind of struggled a little bit first after the stroke, feeling like I let people down. I felt more that way than I let myself down, but I did let myself down too by, not taking care of some of the things that now in hindsight were, definitely things that I could have had better control of.
Mike's story is such a powerful reminder that even the toughest moments can spark real change. Let's pause for a moment. And if you are finding value in conversations like this, here's how you can help keep them going. Stories like Mike's are exactly why I started this podcast, to connect, inspire, and offer hope to stroke survivors and their families. If you've found value in these conversations, I'd love your support on Patreon. By becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/recovery after stroke, you'll not only help keep this podcast alive, but also join a community of people dedicated to recovery and growth. Every contribution makes a real difference. Now, let's dive back in with Mike as he shares more about rebuilding his strength, finding new strength after stroke, and the lessons he's learned along the way. How much do you know about type 2 diabetes? I speak to a lot of stroke survivors who have type 2 diabetes, and they just sort of say it as if it's something that's happening to them that they really can't do much about. So, what do you know about it? How interested did you become in
So
understanding it when you were told you have type 2 diabetes?
yeah, unfortunately, I've I've been or I've dealt with that for like probably 6 to 8. I want to say maybe it's even 8 years now. Time just goes by so quickly. And there's been times where I've managed it really well. And then there's other times where you're just like you get tired of taking the medicine. Some of the medicine that I was taking for it, and I don't mean that this is just really an excuse now that I look back, but it made me feel sick. And I'm like, well, what am I doing to myself? I take this medication and it makes me feel worse than, the diabetes does. But it's easy to like you said, you just kind of like say it as a word and you don't really like really dive into it. I wasn't like closely monitoring my blood sugar like I should. My medication I hadn't actually taken for a bit. I mean, I hate to admit it now, but it wasn't because it did make me feel ill and sick. And I felt like the medicine was doing more harm to my body than what the disease was, but I'm sure it wasn't. But it was the easy way to justify it to yourself by saying, you tell yourself that. But it just kind of, you know, taking it years of taking the medicine and feeling horrible after you take the medicine, that wears on a person as well. So, um, I mean, I know it's a very short window now, but since the stroke, my wife again, she's been my rock, but she's been a lot more aggressive about control, like making sure I control my diet. So that's been a lot better. And they've got me on all kinds of medications now for even more than prior to the stroke. And I'm taking aspirin as well, but like for controlling my blood pressure and cholesterol and with the diabetes. So far, and granted, it's a very short window, but everything. This is probably the best time that as far as my blood sugars and everything have been since I've even been diagnosed with
Yeah.
the diabetes. I mean, one of the things, and not to put a plug in, but I did get your book, and I really wanna, as much as I hate that the stroke happened, and I would never wish that, a stroke on your worst enemy. I really do feel I want to, I want to make this a really important event in my life and make it one of the best things that happened to me. I haven't quite. I kind of realized when I did get the book that I'm still dealing with a little bit of reading, and then I get a little have some trouble. So it may take me a while to get through the book, but what
Yeah.
I have, I really enjoy.
Yeah. That's good. I'm glad. Type 2 diabetes is completely reversible, right?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of that. So I mean, I'd really like to control what I can control as far as diet and at least get it to that point where I could. And I've watched some other things like taking some, things that, to supplement or get away from. Because the idea of being on those heavy medications your whole life that's daunting, and especially if they don't make you feel good.
It's hard, right? This is the thing people don't realize. I mean, being on the meds for the rest of your life to reduce your blood sugars is hard. Changing your diet is hard. Which one do you
Right.
prefer? Which hard is the better one? Now, changing your diet isn't actually that hard. It's just more of a mental game, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, if somebody was, and this is not medical advice, this is not nutritional advice, I am not qualified to give advice, but from what I've seen online on some videos and interviews of people who are medically trained, it is simply by changing your diet, stopping to consume, um, stopping to consume uh, sugars, alcohol, that type of stuff. Someone's trying to reach you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have everything turned off except for my office phone. I'm sorry.
That's
I
all right.
think I got it under control now.
That's all right. So decreasing your consumption, I'm talking about completely cutting out sodas, alcohol, beer, all that kind of stuff, and avoiding high carbohydrate foods like bread and wheat based breads and all that kind of stuff, and eating a heap of vegetables and protein, fish, meat, chicken, any animal protein that you can imagine. You are going to decrease the the response that your body has to insulin and to sugar. And the reason that people are type 2 diabetic is because their pancreas isn't working appropriately, and it's not able to deliver the right amount of insulin to decrease the blood sugar and to send the blood sugar away from the blood into the muscles where it's supposed to be used. So if you just ate a ton of vegetables and protein and then added a little bit of exercise into your routine to get sugars out of your blood into your muscles and then get it burnt, you could improve your diabetes out of sight, like dramatically. And eventually, by continuing that for a month or two, you would find that the need for the medication would decrease. And then with your doctor's advice and guidance, you could completely get off it. And then if you continue doing that, that's going to help you heal your brain from the stroke. It's going to help recovery, and it's going to give space for the inflammation to go away and for the healing to kick in. It's such an it's one of the most reversible conditions out there.
Yeah, and I definitely have seen a lot of videos like that, and I think you know one of the things that have been really useful for me, I've gotten and I never had it before, but a continuous glucose monitor, and
Mhm.
it's really that's super helpful to see like how the ebbs and flows of your body. Like I've been eating really well. I mean, at least as good as I possibly have ever eaten in the last two, since the stroke.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see that even, I eat eat an egg and like I can see what it does to my body where before I would just check it two or three times a day and you just literally, if your life's kind of your glucose is a movie, I'm just seeing a snapshot of a picture with but this can with now looking at my phone and I can literally track it and see that's been a very helpful tool. And I think it's going to be really a useful thing for learning as far as what
Yes.
you're eating and how your body reacts to it, because like a lot of things are very strange, like sometimes where like my even with it my blood sugars will go they go down at night, like can get really low at night,
Mm,
and then like 4 in the morning they start going up. And I mean I haven't ate anything, it's like it's amazing how your
yeah.
body is fluctuating throughout the course of a day.
Yeah. It changes your understanding of what you're doing has an impact. Like when you have a beer, it
Right.
has an impact. When you eat a bread roll, it has an impact. And then you can tell that if you're doing something, all those high insulin spikes, blood sugar spikes, I beg your pardon, all of those are bad for you.
Yeah.
So the idea is to decrease the amount of them, to limit them so that your body can deal with them every so often. But what we do, well, the standard American, standard Australian diet, what we do is we wake up in the morning, we have carbs, bread, spikes your blood sugar. You go and get a
Yeah.
coffee on the way to work, it has two things of sugar in it, spikes your blood sugar. Yeah, you get hungry about lunchtime, or you have a snack in between. You have a, a muesli bar or a chocolate bar or something like that, spikes your blood sugar. You have lunch, you have bread and all that kind of stuff. It spikes your
Yeah.
blood sugar. And that is not how it's supposed to be. Every meal shouldn't be spiking your blood sugar, and we shouldn't be eating as much as we are. So it's like, if you can learn from that glucose monitor, then you can go, you know what, is this worth the negative impact on my body or not? That's how I kind of play the game in
Right.
my head. Is this
Yeah.
improving my recovery, or is it giving it a setback? I don't want recovery setbacks, man. I'm dealing with enough stuff. I don't want to deal with more. And I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be responsible for the next one. Like, I don't want to be the guy that causes that,
Yeah.
you know? And that's how I kind of get my head around my nutrition. And I started many years ago, though, Mike. So I'm well and truly, what's the word? Conditioned for asking myself the question and then making the right decision. Now, it's very important for people to know that, as well as all of the amazing things I do, every so often, I've got to go out and have a beer with a mate. One beer,
Right.
do you know?
Yeah.
And I have to have a burger instead of the steak. I have to, because I'm human. But I use those things as sometimes food, which used to be
Yeah.
an all the time food, and it's just not right. It,
Yeah.
we've moved from stuff that's once in a blue moon to all the time, and now we've got to switch it around and go back to once in a blue moon, especially sweets and cakes and
Yeah.
chocolate bars and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a slippery slope because once your glucose spikes, then you're craving even more.
That's it.
It
That's it.
it's like you slowly start circling down the drain.
That's it. That's it. It's a cycle for sure.
Yeah.
So, what happened with work? Have you been able to kind of get back and start steering the ship again? Where are you at with that?
So it's a challenge. And I've always, again, I don't know what your situation was before your stroke, but like a lot of small business owners, a typical week for me was probably 60 to 80 hours
Yeah,
easy. I
typical.
mean, there's no, my office is connected to our house, so I'm always looking at it and I know there's work to be done. So, since the stroke, it's kind of been a weird thing. Like literally 4 days after the stroke, I was working on my laptop trying to get billings done, which in hindsight was really a dumb idea.
I've
But
done
I
that.
I felt the pressure. I got it, to get money coming in so I can pay everybody. I got to make sure we're billing for the work that we've done. My team has been amazing. They've really have stepped up. Again, this is another example of this could be the best thing to happen to me because it's really opened my eyes. I knew they were capable, but I didn't want to burden them with a lot of the things I was doing. So now I've realized that they can handle a lot more than maybe I was giving them prior. Um, so that's been good, but I've just been trying to ease into it, and I make mistakes. Like today, I went to I've I've been okay to drive, but it was supposed to be very limited. And today I had to meet one of my guys to help him swap out a piece of equipment on a system, and I drove 45 minutes, which was I got there and I felt car sick, and I felt like my brain was way overstimulated, and I was kind of worthless while I was at the job site, to be honest. And then had to drive back, and you're kind of like, well, that was a lot different than those 5-minute drives that I've been doing. Like you quickly learn that you really need to respect those boundaries that you should have had. And I'm trying to be better with it, but I know with work I still make mistakes. Like I'll end up spending a little bit more time trying to do some paperwork or a billing thing or that type of thing. But it's been greatly reduced. I mean, it's less than 4 or 5 hours a week that I've been working compared to what it was before. So,
Mm. I've done exactly what you said. So after the first bleed, I was in hospital for 7 days and then I was out and I wasn't supposed to work for the next 6 weeks or do anything. But, the bills need to be paid, invoices need to be sent, the guys need to get work done. So I get my dad, I wasn't allowed to drive. So I get my dad to come and pick me up and take me down to site and check out the job and speak to the client. And I would have been a mess. Like, I wouldn't have been
yeah,
um, anything like that we're used to seeing. I was completely zonked out and all over the place on meds and whatever. And um, it was really hard, but every job is crucial, right? Because the cash flow is such that if one job
yeah,
doesn't get paid, then you got to find the money somewhere and you got to pay people, and it's a challenge, right? So anyway, we got through that, and then at the end of the 6 week period that I wasn't supposed to be working, I was meant to go back to the hospital for follow up. And a couple of days before the follow up, I went to work. They came and got me. My some of my team came and got me. We went to work, and I wasn't working, but I was sitting down watching them work just to be there. I don't know why I went. And they were working, and I started having another episode. The bleeding started again, and the room was spinning, and I couldn't keep myself upright, and I had to slap my face to try and wake myself up, and all this weird stuff. I needed to throw up. And eventually they drove me home. And when I got home, I told my wife to take me to the hospital. We passed the hospital on the way home as well. And then we went to the hospital and they checked they checked me. It was bleeding again. And then I was admitted for another 3 days. And the first 7 days, I had the laptop in my hospital bed. I was working from the hospital bed. I couldn't believe what I was doing, but I had to do it because that's the type of business. You can't just pause it.
right,
Um, Everything kind of fails after that. Your long-term clients wonder what happened and all that type of thing. So we couldn't just pause it. And then after that second bleed, then I was in a completely different world. I was like spaced out. I couldn't think. I couldn't type an email. I couldn't write. I couldn't speak to people properly. I couldn't begin and end sentences. It was really hard, terrible. Somehow, I have no idea actually how, I can't recall how I found the courage, not the courage, I found the strength or I don't know, whatever I needed to find to just stumble across the line with all these things that we needed to get done and just keep it going as long as we could possibly keep it going. And then I had, I had a good run for about a year and a half after the first year, and then it bled again, and then I went into surgery, and then I had to rehabilitate my left side, and then I was basically out of work. The company was getting some leads, some inquiries, but I couldn't commit to anybody for
right,
anything, and I especially couldn't put in the hard yards. I couldn't put the hours in, and I couldn't do quoting properly because I couldn't get the numbers right. It was a mess. The
oh,
whole thing was a mess, but and my income has been negatively impacted ever since. Like, it's been a minimum of 10 years where I haven't earned a decent income, and I couldn't bring and I couldn't shift that in any way. Like, there's no way to shift it because you're unwell. Your brain doesn't work. You can't
yeah,
physically be places. You can't, you're incapacitated. You're not walking. I mean, but the mind, the entire time, the mind's going, how can I be more productive? How can I get more money? How can I get more work done? And it's
right,
not possible, just physically not possible. It's such a weird state to find yourself in, that small business people just keep countries ticking along. Without them, there'd be nothing.
yeah. And I think most are like super dedicated to their business. I mean, obviously, families like top one of the very, very top things to me. But in a
Mm,
way, it becomes part of your family because
yeah.
you spend so much time at it and you're
Mm.
always worried about it.
Es-
So,
Especially if it's in your house.
yeah. And we have a offsite location, but I still do most of the office work from my house. So it's never gone. But I mean, I'm not sure how long you've been going, but this is our 27th year. It's like I've put like it's all I've known as an adult, you know, keeping this going.
We've been going for 20 years,
Yeah.
but that break happened probably after about 8 years, 8 or 9 years. And then, intermittently, I've been working while I've been recovering through all the dramas. I had a 3 year break, a total break where I completely walked away. And that was from 2016 to 2019. And then I went back to work in 2019. And 6 months later, we were in the biggest, craziest lockdown the
Oh,
world has ever experienced here in Melbourne. We were locked down for the best part of 2.5 years. We were locked down for the majority of the time.
that would be so hard.
Yeah. And we're trying to run a business and I don't know what in that time, but we literally were at home for the majority of that time. So it's like, how do you run a business in that
No,
time? It was so strange. And that's when I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I had time to write a book. That's how much time I had on my hand. It was
yeah,
ridiculous.
we were lucky because during COVID, our line of work was kind of borderline considered essential. So I'm like, we're just going with it. We just kept working. So
Right.
we got lucky where a lot of, like hospitality and things like that, everything was just completely stopped.
Yeah.
But we were fortunate when it came to that.
Yeah. We were essential, but it had to be because it's a property maintenance company. It had to be, there's a leak in my wall or something like
God,
that.
yeah,
And then there had to be, and they were so inconsistent. Some trades could work inside, some couldn't. In some
that's
months, we were allowed to work inside, some months we weren't allowed to work inside. And the only
yeah.
way we could get work was we had to tell our clients, you have to send me an email that says you have an imminent leak or you can see through the wall outside
Yeah, it's an
or
emergency.
or people can see inside your house through the wall or something like that. And I come up with something that makes it possible for me if I get stopped, which they were randomly also stopping people and checking their paperwork, for God's
Oh,
sake. I can't believe I'm even saying it still. It triggers me.
I know.
And I was giving them the instructions on the phone, what to write in the email. And then I would have that email with me so we could go to work. And the government paid people to stay at home. Um, Employees were paid to stay at home under this particular money printing schemes, where they could just get people to stay at home. And we, as a business, received over 2 years, our compensation was $10,000 a year. And that's the most we could do. And that pretty much went to pay taxes and
Right.
um, and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it was it
Oh,
was kind of like what the Aussies say. I don't know. It's maybe said overseas. Well, it's like pissing in the ocean. Like it make no difference.
right. What's the point? Wow.
So
Yeah, I think we were fortunate with kind of the way things worked out for us as far as work goes, but still was stressful. You didn't know like were we going to be shut down the
yeah.
next day or um and like I said, you feel a real commitment to your people, and your customers and
Mm, mm.
but
So, mm, so what? was the cause of the stroke? Was it an ischemic stroke? Was there
Yeah.
a clot that occurred somewhere? Do they know where it occurred, or do they just know where it ended up?
Yep. I want to say it was ischemic, and it ended up in my hyperthalamus, I want to say. And I on Tuesday when I saw the neurologist, he actually had a picture that he printed out for me, and in my mind, I was thinking it would just be like a little pea because they kept saying it was a small stroke. But if I had to scale it like with the rest of it, like looked like the size of a quarter, where it was dead. He's like, that's dead. Where it's white right there, that's dead, and it was a blockage. When I did ask him if I was able to get is it oh, why am I blanking? The the drug that they can give you right away, the PK, is it
TPA.
yeah, yeah, and he said they didn't because they couldn't isolate when I actually had the stroke. It was, could have been at 11 o'clock the prior evening or but no, he's optimistic. I'm still definitely have deficits on my left side. And the one thing that I think I struggle with more than the physical deficits is the fatigue, because you get so tired. And I mean, if the way I try to describe it the best I can, but like if unless you have went through it, it's hard to understand and kind of like, are you crazy? Are you just making this up? Like, but man, just the simplest task, you can get so tired.
Yeah.
Um, and that's been a challenge, but that's improving. You know what I mean? It's like anything. It's like every day, try to get a little better each day, and think you do see those. It's just so slight at times, the improvement. It's hard to see the forest through the trees type of thing, where I'll say I feel like I haven't improved, and my wife will like, yeah, you have. You're walking around the block now. You couldn't even walk, a month ago. But it's those little things you don't see every day when you're going through it
Yeah.
that
It,
can be a challenge.
it takes some time. You have to reflect, and then it's good to ask people and get them to give you their feedback. I was going to counseling when my counselor told me, "You're talking much better this time." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Because I'm conscious of when I missed words or forgot words, but the number of words I was missing and forgetting were less.
Yeah,
And that was what she noticed and she picked up on and told me about, whereas I was focusing on what I was missing. So it is good to have people uh, kind of track your recovery and then tell you how you're going. And it's also good for you to, what's the word, like get some evidence for your own self as well.
right.
So record yourself or write something down and then check back on that in 6 months from now and just give yourself the opportunity to actually prove to you that you are having wins, that you are getting better.
No, that's a great advice because it is like I said, it is just hard to see that and I'm think I'm naturally critical. I'm always like, oh, my left hand drives me insane because it's not doing what I want. I get so mad and so yeah, when you do make those improvements, it's nice, where at first I couldn't even move it, and now I'm trying things with my fingers or what have you. And I mean, a month ago I wouldn't have been able to do that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely making good progress, but it's not as fast as you want. But
Yeah. Patience is the most important word here. And also, you got
yeah,
to be kind to your limbs, actually kind. Like, you got to consider them, you know, somebody who's injured that that you wouldn't be nasty to for them not being recovered enough yet. You've got to
yeah,
really recruit your hand into your team and let it know that, hey, I know you're doing your best. I'm going to be patient with you and I'm going to rehabilitate you and I'm going to allow you the time that you need to heal. That's really important than getting angry at it and
yeah,
frustrated with it because that's not going to That's not going to get you an outcome that is
No,
going to
that
be positive. It's going to create the environment for less neuroplasticity to happen. And what you want to do is you want to encourage neuroplasticity. So positive vibes only is the only way to what's the word, to talk about your hand.
yeah, no,
I had
that's
a
great advice.
I
Yeah,
had a
because
I had a friend of mine who had a stroke who said that the nurse came into her um the nurse came into her house, I think. They were checking up on her, and they were just asking her, okay, so how's your bad hand today?
I know I
Do you know
was
what I mean?
teasing. Yeah, I was teasing like some people at the hospital because we were like, "You mean my bad leg?" Like,
And
and
it's
they're
like,
always like, "No, your affected leg." Like,
yeah,
it's
not your bad leg, your affected leg, right? It's just,
yeah.
it's a
So,
completely different feeling when you say bad leg as
oh
opposed to
yeah,
affected leg. And it's like, okay. And she was
yeah,
so, and she told her off, she said, never refer to my hand as my bad hand. Always refer to it as my recovering hand.
yeah. No, I think that's great. And there's a lot of things in the world. I think like like languages taken hijack and we use things and it's kind of ridiculous. But in this case, I definitely agree with that. Where
Yeah.
those thinking of in the positive is so much better than thinking this is bad or or it's not good or whatever you'd refer to it.
Yeah, it changes your neurochemistry. Like it
Yeah, oh
completely
yeah,
changes it.
yeah.
So that's a really simple way to change it for the better is to just pay attention to the words and how you refer to yourself. A lot of people wouldn't speak to their friends the way they speak to themselves because,
Yeah,
like you said, we can be harsh.
yeah, yeah. That internal voice that you have sometimes can have a bit of a negative vibe to it. At least for me, it can. So try to improve that.
Yeah. So how has this impacted you emotionally and psychologically? Like, where are you at with that part of the recovery? Because I know that some people have the physical part and they kind of go, oh, this is it. This is how I'm going to deal with it. And then they kind of miss or skip the emotional part and the mental health part. Where are you at with that? Those two?
I feel pretty good at least as far as the emotional part of it. I'm a Christian and I've always, faith has always been an important thing to me. And I think my faith has grown quite a bit during this journey as far as like, hey, I'm just like putting myself in God, in God's hands or, or what if other people might, into a higher power instead of it's not going to be me. It's going to be, I'm working towards getting better. And whatever happens, I'm going to make the very best of it. This could have been way worse. When I spent a month in the hospital and like the acute physical or the therapy. And there were people that had it way, way worse than what I did. And then you realize like I should be thankful. I still have the use, even at that point of my right side, which is my dominant side. It could have been, I don't know if their whole body, but it'd even been worse if it would have been my dominant side. That would be much harder to deal with. So I think this has been a good, I don't want to say humbling experience, but an experience where you kind of learn that there's a lot of things that are in my control that I need to take care of, whether it's my diet or what have you. But the things that are outside of my control, I need to be willing to accept it and make the best of it and try to just keep continuing to improve on it if I'm able to.
Yeah. I like that. It's like you're taking responsibility for what you're able to influence. And for lack of a better word, you're outsourcing the rest to a higher power. Call it
Yeah,
God, call it
yeah,
spirit, call it whatever you want, doesn't matter.
yeah,
And then what that does is allows you to have a little bit of faith in the people that you're dealing with and how they're supporting you and the technology that's available and all the things that you're going to need to continue rehabilitation. And at the same time, you're taking action to um, change behaviors, habits, things you've done that you didn't realize were working against you so that they're no longer working against you. That's pretty cool. That's the best way to go about it. And then what that does is enabled you to mobilize in the areas that you can affect positively.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely enlightening and eye-opening when like a life-changing event happens to you, especially when it's not planned. Again, I've had like rotator cuff and you schedule that surgery and it's coming up in a month and this was, when it's just out of the blue like that, you realize there's a lot of things outside of my control that I need to figure out to one accept it, but then how do I make it the best of it as well. But
Gratitude's a great way. What you said
yeah,
about the things that you realized you can be grateful for. And then there'll be people whose dominant side was affected and they might not have that same experience that you had, but they could still find things to be grateful for,
oh, for sure. Yeah,
and
yeah,
they could say that they're grateful for something else that serves them because gratitude sort of takes away the power of being it decreases your victim mentality. It kind of
yeah,
softens that and allows you to see other things that are really important to see, that are worth seeing, that are necessary for you to notice, so that you know that not everything is working against you. Even in the
yeah,
most dire times, not everything is working against you. Some things are going in your favor. And understanding that helps to shift emotionally how that feels.
yeah. Yeah, I've been so thankful for the support of my wife and family. My daughter she just graduated from college and is a nurse. So and she's still living with us because she just graduated. That's been a huge blessing. It's like, and my son's been able to help some, but he doesn't live in the house anymore. But just the sacrifices and the things that they've done, you're just that gratitude and you're just so thankful for. And I just hope that, and obviously it's not for everybody, but you just hope that whoever's dealing with things, whether it's stroke or some other, that they have that support network that they need because it is crucial because it's easy to fall into that a dark space or want to have a pity party for yourself because
Mm.
you know like life's throwing you all these curveballs and you're but no if you I agree, you need to get that mindset set that where you really you feel that no matter what the outcome you're going to make the best of it, and then I think then you're going to have a much better outcome in the end.
Yeah. I just realized I wanted to ask you earlier about the glucose monitor, that continuous glucose monitor. What does it cost to have one of those?
So that was a bit of a battle. So pre I I tried to get it years ago and it was not allowed by our insurance. And it did take a while for me it took like 3 weeks or something after the doctor had recommended it in order for me to get it. And if eventually our insurance did. So I think I mean, I know everyone's insurance is different, but our out of pocket expense for 3 months was like $100.
Okay.
That's with the insurance supplementing it. To be honest, I probably even if they wouldn't have covered it, I probably for let's say it had been $500 or $600, I would have. I mean, I would have paid that. I think because I think it's such a valuable tool, at least for me. I mean, I've been dealing with diabetes now for quite a while, but it's eye opening as far as like what's happening in your body. I used to just take my blood sugar in the morning and at night. Well, that's just such a small window of what's happening.
Mm.
It's amazing. Like there's times where I'll eat and it actually my blood sugar actually drops, and you're like, why is that happening? Or hey, physical therapy was really hard today. Boy, it made a pretty big impact on my sugar levels. So, that exercise is a big factor. And I've seen things like you were saying where they'll talk about even eating your food in a different order
Yeah.
can make a big impact on your glucose levels, which that was kind of news to me. And I'd been you know at least I thought it well relatively informed as far as dealing with my diabetes. But and I so I've only had it a week, so it's a
Yeah.
very short window. But I think I've even seen that a little. You eat the proteins and things first, and all of a sudden, one, it helps make you feel satisfied or not as hungry. But then your body starts breaking those down even before it would have. Even if you're having very minimal carbs, you
Yeah.
eat those the very end or what have you.
Yeah. The way that it gets metabolized slows down because the body's
Yep,
busy metabolizing what first went into the stomach, and then it just shifts it. So fiber, protein,
yep,
carbs last, and hopefully after you've had your fiber and your protein, the amount of carb you eat is less as well.
right,
And those carbs, those fibers, and the protein maybe have had a little bit of fat on it. So the fat, you know, sort of getting around that carb and decreasing its impact as well, because the fat will bind to the carbs and kind of make it a bit harder to digest. Even that helps. So yeah, the order of your food is so important. If you ate the bread first, then it would spike your blood sugar,
right.
and then the fiber and the protein wouldn't have such a great impact on reducing that blood sugar spike. It's fascinating when you learn, and when you sort of start seeing things, then later what it'll do is it'll train you to go, I'm feeling a bit snackish. I'm gonna go and get a overripe banana on the bench. Well, that overripe banana is going to have a different response to the just not green banana, the banana that has just moved beyond being green. They're going to go, it's a completely different meal.
Right,
And that's what it'll train you to do, to know where you're at and what you can and what you should avoid, and what order to have it and how much of it to have, because quantity matters as well. So
oh, for sure, yeah,
half a banana is going to be way better than two bananas.
yeah,
And
for
that
sure.
means if you have half a banana, that means you don't have to miss out on it if you really love it and you're somebody who has um, uh, type 2 diabetes. You can go, all right, I'll have half a banana with some nuts or some peanut butter or something like that. And it completely changes the profile of it, as opposed to having two full bananas with nothing else.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. What would you say has been the hardest thing about stroke, Mike?
Um, I would say for at least for me is been dealing with the fatigue because it comes out relatively out of nowhere. I mean, it's still usually associated with doing something, but just doing sometimes very very simple tasks and getting so tired and having to take a break. That's it's kind of been hard because I'm used to, again, I'm a do like I want to be a doer. Like if if we need to get something done at work, I want to roll up my sleeves and do it. And it's hard to take a step back from some of those things. So I would say that's probably been the hardest. There's still some of the physical things have been difficult, but those are things at least you see a little bit more progress, and you're oh, somewhat overcoming them. It's hard to say where you'll end up.
Mm.
Again, I always struggle with that word normal, like will I ever get back to normal, whatever that is, right? Like so. I just want to get as far as I possibly can, and get back to, you know, whatever the normal becomes, it will be the new norm or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, I would say it's been the fatigue.
Do you notice a pattern in the fatigue? Do you notice there's certain days, times that it gets worse or is better, or is it just all over the place?
It seems like it's been all over the place, and it is usually associated with some task, whether it's physical or a mental task, or even just doing like the occupational therapy, even if it was something that wasn't physical, but we were filling out questionnaires or doing some memory things. Next thing you know, you're like, you get home and you're like, I think I need to take like a 15-minute nap. I'm just
Mm.
shot, like
Mm.
over nothing. But
That's good. That's good that you're doing that. Do you ever notice your fatigue getting worse after a meal?
um, I haven't noticed that, but I guess I mean, it may have happened, but I mean, maybe too, because we try to walk some, at least in the after the dinner meal. And I actually have been really, I mean, my diet's been very strict since
So
my
you've
wife.
been good. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
good.
it's amazing.
The
Like,
walking after dinner actually also is a massive boost to decreasing
right.
that insulin, that blood sugar spike after dinner. It's a
Yeah.
makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I hopefully can keep increasing the distance that I'm going. And it's kind of like life has all these ironies. We literally, we had a dog. I mean, we've always had two dogs, but I one of my favorite things is to pheasant hunt, and it's not. It's more just getting out with the dog, and I just love it. Loving it, being out with friends. So one of the dogs that we had that we recently put down, he had gotten gun shy, so I hadn't been able to hunt with him for like 6 years. Like, I mean, because they're more of a pet than they are a hunting dog for us. Because so that was hard. So I went 6 years, and we finally found a place this summer. We got a puppy. I was going to be hunting with. My expectations were going to be hunting. Going to start over fresh with a new dog. Now with the stroke, it's kind of like, well, hopefully that still ends up being the case. So that's kind of been the little carrot that's been a good driver for me to, like, if I'm doing a few reps with my physical therapy and I want to quit, it's kind of like, well, do you really want to get back out there with the dog, and train this puppy that we just got that's gonna hopefully live a long time? And so,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
it's a funny how things like that happen.
Yeah, and you're currently using a cane, aren't you?
Yeah, so hospital was all walker. Then I went to quad cane when I came home, and now they moved me to like a walking stick, like you might use if you were hiking. I really like that a lot. That's worked out really good for me. So, and I normally when I'm around in the house, I don't even use that. I just kind of surf the pieces of furniture if I lose my balance a little, but it's getting better, but I would certainly not go anywhere walking without the walking stick at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's good that you're transitioned from the other stuff to the walking stick, and hopefully the
Yeah.
next stage is without the walking stick. That'd be amazing. What would you say has been the biggest lesson? Like, what has stroke taught you?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but I probably go back to that the idea of control what you can control and accept what's out of your hands, and
I'm not quite
it,
sure
it
how to
make
help
most
you with that.
and make the best of it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good thing to learn
Yeah,
if you could
yeah,
learn that, implement that.
because I feel like pre or prior to the stroke, it was more if I felt like something was out of my hands, I was just gonna try to bully whatever the task was and just power through it.
Mm,
Where now I feel like in hindsight, you just it makes you more accepting. And I don't want to make it sound like you just give in,
No.
But, you just need to be more forgiving, to things that are out of your hands and to yourself, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's been really cool lately? I've been contacted by people who have had this stroke recently, very recently, which means that they must be, including you, doing searches for support after stroke and finding the podcast and finding it
Oh,
really early in their recovery. And that is amazing because it's not something that I had. I didn't have
right.
podcasts about stroke recovery.
I'm sorry that you didn't have, I mean, I've been grateful for it. I can get caught watching them and,
Mm,
um, I'm really looking forward to digging into the book. So my goal is to try to like, I think the first day I read like 50 pages and my mind was just like all messed up. So I'm like, nope, I got to break this down, give myself 5 or 10 pages. I'm just going to try to ease into it. And
that's more than enough.
yeah,
I was gonna ask you, so like, why was it necessary for you to come onto the podcast?
you've interviewed so many wonderful people and they've helped me so much. I didn't know that my story could really help people because, I don't know, but I also wanted it to like, if it did help one person, I also wanted to try to contribute a little to your work because I really appreciate what you're doing, and you need content,
Mm,
and whether or not you might have a video that's a dud, maybe I'm the dud, but at least we got to work through it a little bit.
yeah,
So,
I really
so
appreciate that.
that was my hope that in some way, maybe some strange way someone could, associate what it's a relatively short journey at this point compared to what, when you look at what you've gone through and all the things that have happened over the years. I know I'm early into this, but if I could even help one person, it's worth it.
It definitely does help because I get people responding every single day, telling me so every day. And they respond to the weirdest episodes or to the one I never expected or the one I did years ago and it's unpredictable because we're all so different and we all have things that we relate to each other about and other things we don't relate to each other about. But
Yeah,
then all of a sudden what happens is somebody goes, oh man, that's me. That somebody might come across this and go, oh, that's my diabetes journey, or oh, I didn't know that about diabetes, or I didn't
yeah,
know about a glucose monitor. The jewels that they pick up are unexpected. You don't realize what people pick up that is important. You think it's a passing comment, but it's like, oh no, that really resonates. So yeah, they all help. Let me tell you, I had this thing in my mind that kind of said, like, I think I want to do 1,000 interviews. We're not at 350 yet, and I'm not sure how long that'll take, but that's a big job, like 1,000 stroke survivor interviews. And then I'm thinking, if I get to 1,000, then the job's done. Like there'll be ample bits of information in there that anyone can stumble across forever on YouTube and just find it and go, oh man, I need to hear that episode, or that's the guy that resonated with me, or I'm like that, etc. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for reaching out and doing that. I just wanted to get a sense of what it was about because the last question I wanted to ask you was, um, what do you want to tell other people that might be listening to this? And I'm not sure. Just want to hear some wisdom about what you've learnt about stroke. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have something that you want to just say to people, impart on people, or just lay on people just so that they can think about?
it might be kind of simplistic, and that's kind of just my nature. Is sometimes simple is better, but I think a little bit about you know realize that you're not the first one going through this, and that there'll even unfortunately be more to go through it, in that you can learn from other people, in that this isn't the end. It's in a funny kind of way, a new beginning, in that a lot of it's going to be what you make of it, and use what other people have been through to learn from. And again, that's why I love your podcast so much, because even if someone's had a different type of stroke or what have it, you can learn. You really can learn a lot from their journey, and sometimes it's a lot easier. you know I I live in Minnesota, where we can get a fair amount of snow. It's a lot easier walking in the steps of somebody else through 2 feet of snow than trying to blaze a trail yourself through the snow. So you can kind of piggyback on what other people have been through. It's not going to be exactly the same, but you can craft that into what your personal journey is and try to figure out how you can make the best of it. So I don't know if that's real words of wisdom, but that's the way I look at it.
I love that analogy about the snow. I certainly appreciate what that means. I don't get out to the snow much, but I know exactly what you mean when you say that. And yeah, the person that's taking those first steps through the snow is definitely creating an easier path forward for the next person. And
Right.
that's a great gift. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah. And that's what you've done a lot with the podcast. And there's a lot of other really good content out on,
Mm.
whether it's YouTube or, books or so.
I'm stunned at
Don't,
the amount of people that want to help. I didn't realize
yeah,
that I would be able to get 350 people to come
that's
on my
amazing.
podcast. At the beginning, I had to find out where they were and search for them and then ask them. And I wasn't sure that people would say yes when I asked them. But my God, no, hardly nobody said no. And now I don't ask. People ask me because they find me instead of me looking for them. And it's a relief. It's so much easier. Um, Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate our chat, and best of luck on the ongoing recovery.
No, I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor for me because, like I said, you really are doing a lot of great things.
Well, that brings us to the end of this inspiring episode with Mike. From facing a sudden wake-up stroke to taking responsibility for his health, managing his type 2 diabetes, and reshaping his life after burnout, Mike's story is a powerful reminder of the strength we all have within us. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment, like, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, a 5-star rating or review would be amazing. It really helps others discover the podcast and join our growing community. Remember to check out my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. It's available on Amazon by searching my name, Bill Gassiamas, or by visiting recoveryafterstroke.com/book. And if you'd like to support me or the podcast directly, head to patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. Thank you for being here and for making this podcast part of your recovery journey. I'll see you in the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamas. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation consultation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.